Hello, everyone. Welcome to eShe TV. I'm Aekta Kapoor. In today's episode, with the state elections going on all around India, we're taking up the subject of Indian politics and comedy entertainment. My guest today is Anushka Shah. Hello, Anushka. Welcome to eShe TV.
Hi, Ekta. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thanks for being here. For our viewers, Anushka is a youth activist who's also been an MIT researcher, and she's a media entrepreneur who has launched a production house called Civic Studios. The media startup creates content for young Indians with civic engagement at heart. Through her work and shows, Anushka's aim is to empower audiences by addressing the lack of confidence in public institutions, knowledge of government and democratic systems, and the low efficacy in affecting change as a citizen. Let me show you a sample of the kind of work that they do with their Hindi video series Pocket Change.
पार्क में छोरी को गोदी में लेके उई माँ कर रहे
कांटा लगा उई माँ
अरे जब
साले इश्शी बॉय राज वाह
अभद्रता
केस बनेगा भाई केस बनेगा
I always wanted to be a politician.
मैं नेता बन के किसानों के बारे में सोचूंगा।
I'm going to be contesting the elections in my city.
नो बेबी नो आई डोंट वांट टू डू दिस प्लीज हम देंगे जन जन को 1 करोड़ रुपए अनबिलीवेबल तालियां बजती रहनी चाहिए
हेलो बबलू जी। मैं हूं जनार्दन और ये है जनता।
Hello.
आपको तो पता ही है हम आपका इंटरव्यू करने वाले हैं। तो चलिए सबसे पहले ये बताइए कि आप क्या काम करते हैं।
अरे क्या काम करते बबलू भैया खुद काम दे रहे
बिजनेस
हाँ भाई, क्या बिजनेस?
नन ऑफ यार बिजनेस
बबलू जी, आप अपने एरिया में क्राइम कैसे कम करेंगे?
हम करना छोड़ देंगे हो गया कम
ओके आपने यहाँ स्किल्स में लिखा है मैजिक।
अरे बबलू भैया कुछ भी गायब कर सकते हैं, फंड, पत्रकार, फॉरेस्ट लैंड।
बाबू बैंक में बैलेंस कितना है बे तुम्हारे?
यही कोई 10,000।
फोन में ओटीपी आया?
ओटीपी हाँ 8265 यही है क्या?
10,000 गायब।
अरे ये तो फ्रॉड है, ये गलत है।
गलत है?
ये एकदम गलत है। आप अभी पैसे वापस करिए। आप कंप्लेन कर दी ना तो आप जेल चले जाएंगे। हम कह रहे हैं आपको।
मेरे कल मैजिक हो गया है तो।
हाँ
So great videos, Anushka. I went through a few of them on YouTube, and they were really, really entertaining. So tell us about Civic Studios, and you've done your research at MIT Media Labs, and why did you decide to launch this in India after that?
Yeah, first off, Ekta, thanks so much for sharing those clips and for going through and watching the videos. For us, Civic Studios originally started as a more of an academic project out of MIT. We wanted to explore what role can entertainment really play in bettering a society and furthering democracy, strengthening a nation. At some point, we realized that as academics, you can sit and discuss for ages on how something should be, but really entertainment is a difficult and challenging industry, and you need to really try and produce that content and see how much audiences buy it, see how the market responds. So we started Civic Studios to be able to produce content for a better India. We are a production house based out of Mumbai. We create entertainment in the form of long form content for OTT platforms, but also short form content. Some of the clips that you showed, that is on YouTube for us under our channel name Pocket Change. So I would say
Yeah.
really two of the key reasons for us of starting this and pushing it is that in India you'll see you're constantly overwhelmed by a sense of problems around you, right? Like in any developing country, but especially one of our scale. It was important for us to create content where you not only discuss the problems but also put forth actions and solutions based on what experts on ground or those who are engaged with that issue very closely, what are they saying and seeing about a way forward in that. So for us, through our content, that was one key objective to push.
Hmm. Hmm. So this series that you've done, Pocket Change, it's some of the videos I went through. You're talking about elections, you're talking about India and the Constitution. They're really funny and they're really insightful as well. So what was the inspiration behind it, and how did it all come together? You have a huge team now.
Yes, so we're a team of about 27, 28 people now, based in Bombay. So I would say the inspiration behind it was that we wanted to create conversation on, like I mentioned, solutions and actions to problems around us. But we wanted to do it in a way that was really accessible, that was entertaining. And so I think some of the thought behind Pocket Change was that comedy has always been a very powerful way to communicate. You are able to create content that your audience will watch with their defenses fairly down. And our goal is not to push a certain ideology or to push a certain right or wrong way of doing things. It's not so much about being politically correct, it is about being factually correct. So, to be able to learn new facts, information, understand how the system and the government works and what role you can play in that, comedy felt like a really powerful way to carry that content. It's also one of the most watched genres on YouTube. So for us, because our target audience is 18 to 24-year-olds, young Indians, and with Pocket Change, as of now, we're focused on Hindi language content. So for us to be able to reach, young Indians in tier one, tier two cities, we felt like comedy was a fantastic device to carry that. And that was the inspiration and thought behind Pocket Change and the content under it.
So comedy itself is great, and it's to reach out to your audience. It's also great, but there is a lashback that a lot of comedians today are facing from the government and the government supporters. So, do you end up self-censoring your content?
It's a good question. I think in the day and age that we live in, it's not so much just about the government you're under, but also the kind of political environment that in general is created, right? Government is fortunately, unfortunately, a reflection of the society that we live in a democratic country. You can say that with free and fair elections. Um, the kind of backlash for content that might be politically confrontational will come likely not just from the government but also from other sources around. Now, our focus is not so much about politics purely. um, the line that we use internally is that our focus is system, not sarkar. There's a
Hmm.
fine line between the two, but irrespective of how the political establishment changes, who comes, who goes, it's very important that the institutions are strong. It's very
Hmm.
important that the stage on which the political actors stand is strong. That, when you're talking about education, when you're talking about healthcare, when you're talking about employment, that those are things that young people can access, that the average Indian citizen can feel like they have the voice to be able to address those issues. So for us, I think comedy is definitely, not necessarily the easiest space to get by in while wanting to say important things in a witty and edgy way. So there is certainly a certain amount of, I don't know if self censorship would be the right word, but a certain amount of being contextual to the times and age that we live in. And you want to
Hmm.
be able to still keep up resistance and conversation, keeping that context in mind.
Hmm. So there has some amount of care goes into the creation of that content.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so because you're working in a space that's entirely social media driven, how would you say, and you've been a researcher in this field, how would you say that the internet and social media have changed things when it comes to voter awareness? I mean, what are the pros and cons of that?
Yeah. Voter awareness, when we look at it from an academic, very academic lens, is always a very challenging space. Why does somebody go and vote? It's a question that in kind of democratic theory has been questioned many, many times. There are many different theories around it. um, there is definitely, I think, with the advent of the internet and free access to information, there's definitely much more of a culture about talking about the importance of voting. There is a brand of coolness to it almost that has come in. I think, especially, we see this often with in the last couple of Indian elections, celebrities often doing this, right? When they go and vote and they tweet pictures of themselves voting. And in a country like ours, we look up to our film celebrities, sports celebrities this much as idols. That does have a huge role to play. So there are definitely a lot of pros of being able to essentially create a sense of shared responsibility towards voting. Um, and fundamentally, for a collective exercise, that kind of shared responsibility is very important. I would say some of the negatives of it are the fact that today, with the kind of access to information that's there on the internet, especially with news, right? And this has kind of now been a well established phenomenon over the last couple of years, that there's a sense of cynicism and negativity that has started to also seep in about world events and current affairs. Because you're constantly reading about things that are going wrong, and you're bombarded with that information and imagery in a much more emphatic way than the pre internet age that you were, right? Earlier, it was in a contained form with your newspaper that you read at a specific time. Now it's
Mm,
coming at you in all kinds of notifications all through the day. You might be in
yeah.
the middle of, having a good moment, but you're reading a notification about a bombing somewhere. So what that has also done is created this sense of a constant doomsday and a sense of helplessness. And
Mm,
that, again, in democratic theory, has always been proven to say then people feel less of a motivation to go out and create change, of which voting is an important part.
mm,
So I think there are pros and cons to the flood of information that's out there, but which is why I think for us the goal is to be able to use that space, that to be able to create content other that people can freely watch, that
mm.
has more of a constructive narrative to it.
Mm, mm. Actually, I identify with that because even at eShe, my whole purpose was to put the spotlight on women doing good work and to change the narrative of the media away from always talking about bad news and,
Yeah.
to have at least that little pocket where you can be inspired and where you can get something that really makes you think and changes the way you think, actually. So, we're talking now about mainstream news channels. They've become increasingly shrieky, and it's not very easy to digest it. I mean, you feel physically agitated after watching news channels these days, and
Yeah.
but at the same time, you have this huge burst and growth in YouTube channels and citizen journalism, and people just picking up the mic and just speaking what they have to say. I mean, there are obviously pros and cons of both. But what has been your experience like when it comes to the authenticity of the content and versus the freedom of speech? How do they both compare, in your opinion?
I think with the way media channels have evolved for the news, and to your point about the fact that it's got so shrieky, aggressive, it's no wonder that it's turned a lot of young people away from that kind of news, right? If you see more
Mm,
statistics about who audiences are for TV channel news, it's much older audiences who have a certain habit also, and they're used to kind of getting their news from television. Young people are hardly doing that now.
mm,
So it's unfortunate because I think when you start to access your news from social media, which is where a lot of young people are now getting their news, the
mm,
algorithms are designed to give you content that creates a confirmation bias, right?
mm,
It's
mm,
designed to either make you strongly agree or strongly react and agitate. And this is well established in various studies that we've seen coming out of MIT and other places have proved that the
mm,
more social media platforms get you to react in a polarizing way, the better their
mm.
engagement levels and the better the platforms do. Um,
Right.
so you might be getting news which you think is factual news and is objective, but really the framing and
Yeah.
the perception might be more to further an echo chamber that you're already in.
Yes.
To the specific question of YouTube channels, I do think that there are some, fantastic news outlets and news channels on YouTube that are very creator led. It's very much about, as an audience, do you trust X or Y that you're watching? You get to know more about their personal lives, who they are, their backgrounds. So there's much more of a transparent understanding about who this person is and what experiences or biases they come with. Now, that may not necessarily mean that you are moving away from your echo chamber because you're likely picking, creators who you agree with or you enjoy watching. and at least has more of a transparent relationship. When you're
Mm,
watching a news channel, you don't necessarily have an entire understanding of why they are saying what they're saying, right? Unless
mm,
you get very much into who's funding them, what are their motives, what are the incentives. With
mm,
YouTube channels that are sharing news, I think there's more of a transparent relationship there. There's some great channels that carry news in a very concise and entertaining way. And that's
mm,
important because in the absence of that, not sure as young people where we would be accessing news from. And
mm,
but, in India, this is a little bit still uh, lesser than it is, I would say, in the US or UK. But you have a lot of comedians who do late night news, and that's
mm.
become an important source of understanding the news. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you're talking about being creator led and creator driven. So the audience feels a kind of a personal connect with these, with these anchors and with these people who are doing this kind of citizen journalism. But you are hiring a team of professionals. They're actors, they're anchors. Um, I'm sure that they do have some kind of positive or negative feedback that they're constantly having to deal with on social media in their own spaces. So how do they deal with it, and how has it been so far?
I think with the work that we do, our objective is to create conversation on these issues. So the more reactions we get, in some sense, the more it's a sense of success that you are creating
Mm,
um, a provocation to think differently or to question.
mm,
Of course, there's quality differences in the kind of reactions that you would like, and you want constructive ones rather than destructive ones. I think, touch wood, so far we've been lucky to, I think, not have any overwhelming uh, negativity to the extent that it's I would say, felt like a challenge for either us as a company or for any of the individual members on the team. We're of course a young startup still in our early days. As we grow and expand, I'm sure this challenge will grow and expand.
mm,
I think the philosophy that we try and keep in mind is, uh, you have people with all kinds of ideologies out there, and you unfortunately have to take in the good with the bad, and you try
mm,
and focus more on the good and the constructive. We're not necessarily looking for praise; we are looking for
mm,
constructive conversation on the issues we create, and
mm,
often, you know often the feedback we've got has been extremely valid because we're a group of young people who don't necessarily have the answers, and we're not even here to say that. What we are here to say is that we are going to ask the important questions, and between us and the audience, we want to co create and collectively discuss what those answers are. How to be
mm.
better as a nation and as a society. If anyone has an final and conclusive answer to that, I think we'd like to meet them. I don't think there's anyone out there like that. So the more democratic we keep our exercise and engaging with our audience and getting input, the better it is.
Yeah, that's very wise actually. And I think as a society, one never there's no like perfect society. It's always going to have differences and conflicts, and all those issues always going to be there. But having the maturity to talk them through, and having that sense of acceptance that there's going to be all kinds of people. So you have to accept all kinds of points of views without chopping each other's heads off. And there has to be a space for healthy debate. And I think one thing that your shows are bringing up is that let's stop making models or whatever, or putting our elected leaders on a pedestal and seeing them as some kind of gods, and not seeing them that you've elected them to do a certain job, and if they're not doing the job, they shouldn't be there. So I think that kind of a feeling is important to teach, I think for all of us to relearn when it comes to being citizens. So what else is coming up at Pocket Change now with the elections going on?
We have, we've been creating some exciting content on the elections. There have,
Mm,
of course, been five major state elections. There is a Maharashtra election that is also coming up, local elections. We are working on and have different partnerships with different, government establishments to create content around voter awareness. So we're quite excited about that. I think, pushing content towards voter awareness is the bedrock of democracy, really, in so many ways. So yeah, we're very excited about that. I think, you had shown a clip of one or two of the videos that
mm,
had been made.
mm.
We
Mm.
have, over the first year of Pocket Change, which was 2021, we piloted different content. And this year,
Mm.
we're looking forward to kind of expanding on that. We have various kind of mini web series that we are coming out with. They are very story led, very character driven, but really focused on themes like, uh, you know, employment and access to government jobs.
Mm.
You know, relations between police and citizens. Your police
Yeah.
really is your first point of interaction, right, between
Mm.
state and citizens. Understanding the role of the police, why they do what they do, what are their challenges, how can you as a citizen advocate to create a better police? Because it affects us in every aspect of life, whether we
Yeah.
want to, you know, you have a small
Yeah.
crime, your cell phone gets stolen, you got to go to the cops. You have a larger, you know, let's say incident of sexual harassment, supposing, you got to go to the cops. You want to protest and, you know, express your freedom of speech, and when you're
Mm.
at a protest, you will have to engage with the cops. So understanding how police and citizens can have a better relationship, and this is a global problem. This is
Mm.
not just an Indian issue, but for us, I think that's a core part of some of the upcoming content.
Okay, so great. What's as a parting shot, tell me what is your idea of India?
um You know, I think my idea of India is the idea of the Indian Constitution. India really came about as an entity with the birth of the Constitution. Right? Prior to
Mm.
that, we were a loose conglomeration of kingdoms. The 3 years that was spent in the Constituent Assembly, where they wrangled with various topics from gender to education to even space travel, right? Even
Mm.
back then, you know, they had discussed space travel. A lot of the ideas that were discussed in those 3 years, which led to the longest constitution in the world and one of the most respected constitutions, I think
Mm.
the values enshrined in that really define the values of India. So
Mm.
I would very much say that my idea of India is the idea of the constitution.
Excellent. And I remember seeing that video about uh, India getting divorced from the constitution and how time or Samay is counseling them about it. And well, I mean, I enjoyed watching your videos, and I hope that more people watch these videos. And I hope that the idea of what you're trying to do, it's really worthy. And I hope you're able to take this forward. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your ideas and for your motivation in keeping this going despite the pandemic and all the challenges that you must have faced. Um, so thanks a lot for being on the show today, and all the best to you and your team.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for kind of sharing with the wider audience about Civic Studios and Pocket Change. So,
Thank you so much.
okay.
And for our viewers, do follow us on eShe World for more interviews with amazing women and stories of our shared humanity. Bye bye.